You man. Nixon's lost it. He's gone over the edge. The wheel is spinning, but the rodent is definitely dead.
Mr. President, do you think the war on poverty? And I said yes, yes it is. And the poor lost.
I had nothing to do with this war in Iraq. I was out of town at the time. Stormathon thing against all extremistic fractions is concludified. Johnny! You know, after my second divorce, I was really upset. I walked into a bar, I sat down, and I yelled out, "All lawyers are assholes." And the guy next to me said, I resent that. I said, really? Are you a lawyer? He said, no, I'm an asshole.
You know, Harvey, the other day said, John, what do you call a bunch of rabbits that are standing in a long row, and then they all take a step backward? I said, I don't know, Harvey. What? He said, that's a receding hairline. And sometimes I'm jacked in. You know, in Las Vegas, money isn't everything. And if you stay here long enough, it's nothing. What? Did you hear about the flasher who thought of quitting? Yeah, he was going to hang it up. But he changed his mind. He said, what the hell, I think I'll stick it out for one more year. That boring man that you see at the end of 60 Minutes every week. You know who I'm talking about. Andy Rooney. Are you Rich Little, that guy that imitates all those people on television? If you choked a Smurf, what color would he turn? From Hollywood Squares. Paul, can a chicken lay an egg in the shape of a bowling pin? You know what he said to this? Oh, sure, if you tie their little feet together. Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Sex is a lot like air. You're not aware of it until you don't get any. Dr. Phil, you know who I'm talking about, huh? That great big guy with the bald head. You know, obviously a man who has never been in his own diet. I know what you know. And if you knew that I know that, then you would know that I know that you know.
Walter Meth. You know something, Walter? I have known you for over 40 years, and I've never asked you this question, but where the hell were you born? Where do you come from?
Boston, Massachusetts.
Boston, Massachusetts? Why did you leave?
I can't stand Boston, Massachusetts. All they've got there are hockey players and hookers.
Oh, really? Well, my wife happens to come from Boston, Massachusetts.
Really? What team did she play for? Do you know that Rich does an impression of me? He does. Have you ever seen it? It's fantastic. He does me so good, you'll have to see it sometime. In fact, it's so good, I put a little clause in my will that said, when I die, they should bury Rich Little.
This is Tony Bennett. Don't you wish everybody was? You know, I love Frank Sinatra. I really did. You know, Frank saved my life once. You know, I was being beat up by a bunch of hoods. And Frank said, come on, fellas, that's enough.
Fairy tales can come true. It can happen to you if you're young at heart. For it's hard, you will find, to be narrow of mind if you're young at heart. My kind of town, Chicago is my kind of
have, and people to people they smile at you. Each time I roll, Chicago is, oh, it's calling me home. Chicago is one town that won't let you down. It's my kind of town. Chicago, 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 my kind of town. Chicago.
Feeling it? This is a great place to be, especially on an afternoon where it's going to be a little hot today. I'm guessing. I do a little thing called weather locally here, so I'm just kind of guessing. It might be a little warm today, but I'm glad you came out. You all came out for the same reason I did, to really give back to the community, and that's what the Smith Center does, a beautiful place. And this is all for education and outreach. They believe in young people, they believe in arts education, and every little bit, every dime goes right to that from tonight. So we're really happy you're here. There you go. You got a round of applause right there for the Smith Center. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces too, and I'm very happy about that too, that you guys care so much about the community. And another man who does, Norm Clark. He gives up his time, and he's won numerous awards, and you know him from his column in the Review Journal, and you know celebrities actually call him up and give him the tidbits. Oh, he's pretty good at sleuthing, but he has a lot of friends in the business. So, because this is called Conversations with Norm, let's introduce the legend himself, Norm Clark! Most people expect me to be so long-winded. You notice I'm just getting right into this, because I know you want to see who's coming up next. An impersonator. We talked backstage. He likes the impersonator title, not so much the impressionist, because he doesn't overdo it. He really tries to get practically in the head of the people that he impersonates up here, and a lot of you know that. And you know him from so many wonderful things. Norm's won lots of awards, so has this gentleman. He is at the Laugh Factory, at the Tropicana. The smart people are going to go there and watch him. Smarter people are already here tonight to see everyone on your feet for the legend, a man who's had over 50 years to his credit in the public eye, Rich Little, everyone. Please stand.
Show.
Oh my God.
Shot on Norm Clark.
Sorry.
And I forgot the line that we were going to use for that. So
That's why you're a columnist.
I'm not a radio guy, for sure.
I can't imitate you, I know that.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. A lot of distractions or other things, opportunities, options out there. Glad to have you. Truly glad to have my special guest today. Feel like we've got 200 guests up here on stage. That's how many voices Rich can do. And I think what we'll do is we'll just get into it at the very start. I know that you were born in November 26, 1938, and in Ottawa.
Right, makes me 49.
Yeah. Tell us about growing up in Ottawa, your early years, your family.
Well, I had a wonderful childhood, great parents. My father was a doctor, a neurologist. My father was. That's why he was always telling me to piss off. No, I'm just kidding. He was a great doctor, and my mother was a housewife, and no show business background at all, really. My mother was in a few plays when she was in college, but that's about it.
Didn't your mother have some favorites?
Somewhat?
Favorite, or was it your father that?
My father. My father, yes. He loved George Burns and Jack Benny.
Wow.
Particularly George Burns. We watched the George Burns show every week. And, you know, when I got to know George Burns and Jack Benny later on and worked with them, I thought, boy, my father would really be in his glory. I mean, he would love that, but he never lived long enough to see me succeed in show business, you know.
Now, sketching, I believe, became your earliest passion.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I was always interested in people, so I would sit on the bus or the streetcar back then and observe people, watch them, and then I started sketching people, and then I started doing the impersonations. Actually started doing teachers at school. But I drew a lot of sketches and down through the years. I don't know whether you can see them or not, like Tony Bennett and Bob Goulet, and I don't know whether you can see those on the back, but Carol Channing and you know, just a lot of I've done hundreds of them actually over the years, you know. And Sean Connery, and my all-time favorite, Will. I once said to him, "How do you feel, Mr. President?" He said, "Well, thank you." Me? I did that one 6 times. I never liked it. Every time I drew it, I kept making me look better. Jack Benny, Johnny Carson, you know, there's so many. These are all my heroes, really. These are the people growing up that I admired: Jimmy Stewart and Frank Sinatra, and of course John Wayne, the Duke. First sketch I did was Humphrey Bogart.
And why is that?
Well, I was just such a great fan of Humphrey Bogart's. You know, when he played Casablanca and The Big Sleep and all those detective movies. You know, I thought he was pretty good. I never met him, of course. That was before I came to Hollywood. But you know, Bogey was always like, when that plane leaves the ground, you be under it. But Casablanca, wow, what a great movie that was. But I was such a great movie buff when I was a kid. You know, I watched most movies in the buff. And I admired all these people that I drew, and I never dreamed when I was a teenager that later on I would not only get to know them, but work with them. And it still is amazing when I think back. I can remember 1950, family went to see Showboat with Howard Keel. And it was a great musical. And my dad, it wasn't really show business, but on the way home he said, "That Howard Keel, I'd give anything to meet Howard Keel. He's a man's man." Well, I did meet Howard Keel, and I told him about my dad, and it kind of brought tears to my eyes, because there I was, suddenly a friend of Howard Keel's. All that time since Showboat.
Almost like a seed planted in your gravitating toward celebrities and show business.
Yeah.
In many cases. Now you were an usher for a number of years.
Yes, I was an usher at the Capitol Theatre in Ottawa. They had adjoining theaters, and they had a sort of a tunnel between the two theaters. And I would go to one theater and be an usher, and then I would take my uniform off, dash to the other theater, watch that movie, and then actually I was a terrible usher because I was watching the movie all the time. And people were saying, "Excuse me, could we find a seat?" You know? And I'd be watching the movie like this. You know? And I remember I saw the movie Marty with Ernest Borgnine. When I was an usher, I saw a lot of movies a lot of times, but Marty I saw a lot, and I really memorized most of the dialogue from Marty. And when I first met Ernest Borgnine, when we did Hollywood Squares, it was the first time I met him, I started doing a whole scene for Marty for him. And hello, is this Mary Feeney? This is Marty Paletti. I wonder if you recall me. Yeah, we met in the Archeo Chest on West Palm Square. You with a friend of yours and I was with a friend of mine called Angie. Yeah, this was about a month ago, you know? And I'm doing this, and Ernie's looking at me going, I don't remember any of it. You know, and then I ended up, which was a great thrill for me to, after he passed away, he had been working on a cartoon, and what was it called?
Frankie's Miracle.
Frankie's Miracle, a cartoon, and he was doing kind of an evil elf, and he passed away in the middle of taping that, and then I went in and I was honored to do it and finish the movie for him, and sometimes I had to pick up in the middle of a sentence. I mean, that's tough to do. You have to be right on to do that. But I did finish that movie, and that was a thrill for me. I've done a lot of dubbing for movies when people either passed away or lost their voice. I did David Niven for Curse of the Pink Panther and Revenge of the Pink Panther. I did Peter Sellers, who had passed away, a couple of lines of his. I did a Christmas special as Gene Kelly, and of course, you know, Gene had that kind of like high voice when he talked, and I did all the dubbing for Gene. And then I did dubbing for Tony Curtis, and he made some epic in Spain, and he never got paid, and he was furious, and they really took him for a ride. I mean, he was so angry, he quit the movie, left, came back to America, and these people phoned me up and wanted to know if I could dub his voice, and so they could get the movie out. So I said, okay. And so Tony phones me up and he said, Rich, you're not going to dub that movie, are you? My God, that's awful. And those people, they should be put in prison. And I said, well, they asked me to do it, and I did it, Tony. Did you get paid? I said, yeah, I got paid. What did they pay you? Well, I did it for $5,000. Oh, good. You owe me half of it. Anyway, that was funny. It was fun. It was fun to dub for movies. I once did Stacy Keach for Mike Hammer, and he was detained in England for having something in his possession. And, I had to dub his voice for 6 Mike Hammers before they could put them out. And that was tough because I couldn't do them at all. So I'd listen to a line of his, then do a line, then listen to another line, do a line. And that was a tough assignment. But, you know, they were happy with it, so nobody seemed to know.
On the subject of how you go about this,
Yeah.
It starts with the rehearsal, it starts with the listening, but not everyone can have that voice in their head.
Well, I think to be a good impersonator, you have to hear it when you do it. And most people don't hear themselves. You know, I can remember when I was younger, people would do impressions for me and think they were wonderful, and then they put them on tape, and then they play them back and go, oh, gee, that's not so hot, you know, because they don't hear it. But I have the ability to hear what I'm doing, so I'm my worst critic. I mean, every night when I perform, I'm saying to myself, that wasn't bad, oh, that I lost it there, oh, that's better there, and so I'm constantly critiquing myself all the time. You know.
Perfectionist. Yeah.
Well, you know, you'll never get it perfect, but you know, you've got to kind of listen and watch somebody a lot, I mean, so that you become the person. You know, I mean, I used to get so into doing Johnny Carson that sometimes finish a show. And I'd walk to the dressing room and find myself writing out an alimony check. So, you know, you just try to become the person for you know, when you do it. And sometimes you can get into them and become physically them, and other times you have to kind of fake it, you know, because, you know, I can look a bit like Jack Benny and George Burns by, you know, kind of scrunching over and crinkling the eyes and everything. But there are some impressions I do I can't look like at all. Orson Welles, forget about it. Or Raymond Burr, tough to do. Jack Lemmon was good for me because I kind of had a Jack, You know, there's a great story about Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. There's a true story. It shows the connection they had with each other. Jack Lemmon at one time made a film called Avante, I think the name of it was, a movie that went nowhere. It was terrible. I think it was Billy Wilder, but it wasn't one of his great movies. And so Jack had a premiere for this movie in Hollywood, invited all his friends to see Avante. So they all showed up, and they started watching it, and the door kept opening behind. You could see the lid coming in. People were leaving. They just left. It was so bad. And they're just leaving in droves. And so when the movie was over, everybody was gone but Walter Matthau. And Walter Matthau was sitting in the front with his feet up like this. And Jack went up to him and said, all right, big mouth. You're on authority on everything, for God's sake. What did you think of the movie? And Walter went, get out of it. Get out of it? That is typical Walter Matthau. Get out of it. You punch, moron, dickhead. What a great combination they were, huh?
Love that combination.
Yeah, they were great.
During your teens,
Yeah.
you grew up with Paul Anka.
Well, I grew up. I don't know about Paul. Well, I grew up. I don't know about
How did you cross paths?
Paul.
Were you-
I've known Paul since I was, God, I knew him when he had his old nose. That's kind of cool, but I'm not a huge Paul Anka fan, but maybe because I know him too well. But I will say this, we did a lot of shows together in Ottawa for $10 or $15. We'd perform for the Knights of Columbus or Shriner conventions, and somebody would pay us $10 or $15, and he would sing and I would do a few impressions. And then one day he phoned me up and he said, I'm going on the Perry Como show next month. And I said, oh, sure. Good luck. He did. He went on the Perry Como show and his career took off. And then I did the Ed Sullivan show, so I wasn't far behind him, but Paul has had an interesting career. You know, he's well, I don't want to knock anybody, but he's sort of difficult at times.
Well, you had a partner early in your teens.
Yeah.
Or I don't know about early in your teens, but early, really, at the starting point of your career.
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I had a partner. His name was Jeff Scott, and we both did impressions. And we used to do a lot of functions, like I said, around Ottawa. You know, these organizations would hire us for a few dollars, and we'd drive over on our bicycles, and then do the show, and then drive home on our bikes. And we were lucky if we got $10, you know, which we thought was a lot of money. I remember one time we showed up for a show at somebody's house on the outskirts of Ottawa, and we were late. And as we approached this house where this show was going to be held, some organization, we were on our bikes, and Jeff got his pants caught in the chain on the bicycle, and he couldn't get free of the bicycle. because his pants were in the chain. So they were introducing us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Ottawa's most talked about young talent, Rich Little and Jeff Scott. They're all partying. Jeff's trying to get this bicycle off his pants, and he couldn't. And we went in, and he dragged the bicycle into the place right on stage, and we did our act, and he's got a bicycle on his head.
Everybody thought it was part of the act.
Yeah, they said, God, that's funny. Who dreamed that up? I can't believe that. We did the whole show, and he had this bicycle on his hand. Things happen. I mean, oh my God. Sometimes we get stuck in the rain. We're going to perform at some function and pouring rain. And we'd show up and, God, they'd introduce us, come out like drowned rats and have to perform. Oh my God.
So I recall that you won a talent contest. And
Yeah.
And I remember that you said you thought you guys were pretty hot stuff at that point.
We did. Yeah, we did. We won a town scout show in Toronto on television. And then we thought, boy, we're heading for the big time. Well, we weren't. Well, we thought we were. And then we found out Ed Sullivan was going to be at the national, he was going to be at the exhibition in Toronto, performing, really being an MC, introducing the acts as Ed did. And we found out that Ed was going to be there, so we took the bus down to Toronto, and we bluffed our way into Ed Sullivan's dressing room. Just actually walked right in. Nobody stopped us. And they were so shocked. Who are these kids, And we started performing for him the minute we hit his dressing room. He's standing in his shorts on the phone. And he never looked up once. So we're going through all these impressions, and we're doing Canadian impressions. He wouldn't know anybody we were doing. And we were giving it our all, and he didn't look up once. He's on the phone in his shorts. And finally, when we finished, he looked up and said, "You boys are really sensational. I'll tell you what, I want you to come back and do my show in 10 years. So we went, wow, we're going to be on the Sullivan Show. They actually put in the paper, Ottawa boys on Ed Sullivan in 10 years. It was the brush off, for heaven's sake. I still got that at home, that heavy. And I fooled Ed. I was on the Ed Sullivan Show in 7 years. He didn't remember, but he was a strange man, Ed Sullivan. Young people ask me about Ed Sullivan all the time, Well, a lot of young people don't even know who Frank Sinatra is. I mean, kids today are into their own thing, but some people are interested in the past, and they know a lot of the people I do. But I had a girl not too long ago say to me, "Ed Sullivan, you talk about him in your show. Who is he?" I said, "Well, he was a big star back in the 60s. And they said, "Well, what did he do? Did he sing? No. Did he tell jokes? No. Did he dance? No. What did he do?" And I had to think about this. I said, "Well, he was a pointer. He just pointed to the act. And he couldn't talk, and he couldn't read. But he couldn't quit because he was a big star." He was the strangest man I ever met in my life. Ed Sullivan. I can remember one time, I had a record ad on A Christmas Carol, the Scrooge story, and it sold very well. I've done it since on television. I did it for HBO, the story of Scrooge. It's a great thing to parody because, you got the phantoms that show up in the middle of the night and a Scrooge, redeeming himself and everything. And so Ed says, "Ricardo," you always thought I was Mexican, I don't know. "Ricardo, I want you to, next week, as we're coming up to Christmas time, to come on our show and do your version of A Christmas Carol." And I thought, "You want me to do A Christmas Carol? How much time are you giving me, Ed?" "I'll give you 4 minutes. I thought, 4 minutes to do A Christmas Carol? Good, what can I do in 4 minutes? Boil an egg? Well, I worked at it. I condensed that story down to just a few sentences and had it in 4 minutes. And I've still got it at home. I hate to look at it, but anyway, 4 minutes. I got it to 4 minutes. The Phantoms all show up together, and Ed comes to me about 20 minutes before airtime and says, "Ricardo," I said, yes, Ed. "You know, our show is running a little long tonight. You know, I'm going to have to cut you down to 3 minutes." And I said, "What? 3 minutes? Ed, I can hardly do it in 4 minutes. You want me to do it in 3 minutes? Well, you saw me do it at rehearsal. How can I possibly do it in 3 minutes?" Ed looks at me and he seriously says, "Well, I know. Why don't you take Scrooge out of it?" That's exactly what he said. I said, "Great. Who do the Phantoms visit? Nobody?" No. But I did it. I did it in 3 minutes, and it's not very good, but I get a laugh out of it because I know the story behind it, you know.
That was, you were on Ed in 1964, and you were 26 years old.
Right.
How did your career, what was the big boost?
Well, I mean, actually, the Ed Sullivan Show was a terrific boost for any entertainer because everybody watched the Ed Sullivan Show on Sunday night at 8 o'clock. It was either that or a test pattern. Some people watched the test pattern. I mean, the Ed Sullivan Show, the thing that made the Ed Sullivan Show work was it was a variety show, and they had all kinds of entertainment on, jugglers and musicians and singers, and you know, the pace was pretty good. I don't think Ed had anything to do with it, really. I mean, he was just a pointer. And, but you know, if you were on the Ed Sullivan Show back in the 60s, and you were on it maybe twice, and you really did well, you were practically a household name. Everybody would stop you on the street and say, "Oh, I saw you on the Sullivan Show." Well, that doesn't happen today, because today there's so much to look at. But back then, if you did Sullivan, and another show that was of great exposure was Hollywood Squares, and I guess the Dean Martin Roasts. I would say those three shows helped me the most of all the TV shows I've ever done.
What I was trying to say is, had you been discovered by the time you got to Sullivan, or had Mel Torme had?
Yeah, Mel Torme got me on the Judy Garland show,
and that was the big break.
That was the first big break. Yeah,
That's what I
64, January 64. I was just 12.
And she wasn't keen on impressionists, if I remember right.
No. Mel Torme, who I got to know in Toronto, we did a variety show together, and Mel said, "Richmond," Mel had that breathy voice, I think you're going to do the Judy Garland show." And I said, "I am? I'm going to play a tape of all your impressions for her, and she's going to flip." And I said, "Really?" So I put down about 30 impressions on a tape for Mel Torme, and he played it for Judy Garland to get me booked on the Garland show. And he actually got in to see her in her dressing room, and he starts to play this tape of me doing all my impressions. And Judy says, this is a little gross, but this is exactly what she said. Can't believe this. She said, "An impersonator? I don't want an impersonator on my show." And Mel said, "Well, why not? He's great." "I know," but she said, "Impersonators make me fart." That's exactly what she said. And I often think about that. I was blowing a nose when I was around. I don't know why. But anyway. So anyway, imagine before playing the tape for her, she said that. You know, so he starts playing this tape for me, and I'm doing people like Fred McMurray and Lloyd Bridges and Raymond Burr and all these voices that were hot at the time. And she was kind of not interested and sort of saying, "No, I don't want an impersonator on the show." And all of a sudden, I did James Mason on this tape, and Judy went, James Mason. I love James Mason. She'd made A Star Is Born with him. And I guess they got along great, but she just idolized James Mason. So when I did my James Mason, she said, "Bubba, that's terrific," you know? And so I got on the Garland Show because of my James Mason. Now we fast forward to about 6 or 7 years later, when I was doing a lot of TV and become a, sort of a semi-name. And I ran into James Mason at an American Film Institute tribute to I forget, Alfred Hitchcock. And there was James Mason. So I went up to James Mason. I said, "Mr. Mason, my name's Rich Little, and I want to thank you for getting me on the Judy Garland show." And he looks at me like, "What the hell am I talking about?" I said, I do an impression of you." And he went, "What on earth for?" He walked away. And then I followed him and I said, "No, I'm an impersonator, and I did James Mason. I did you for Judy Garland and got on the show." And he said, "Read it with my voice?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Is there money in it?" I said, "Well, yes, actually there is, because my career really took off. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for being with Judy and doing that movie." "Well, I didn't like making that movie very much. Most of my good scenes ended up on the cutting room floor." That's what he said to me. So every time I watch A Star Is Born, I think of all his best scenes are ended.
I have a random question. Did you ever have a wardrobe failure?
Well, yes, I did. Yes, I did, Norm, a couple of times. One time I was performing at the Sands Hotel, and Perry Como was sitting in the front row. And when I did Tom Jones, my impression of Tom, where I wiggle and do all the gyrations and everything, I split my pants. This was opening night at the Sands Hotel. I'm doing Tom Jones. There's Perry Como, and I split my pants so bad I had to go off and find another pair of pants. And it was a very embarrassing moment, but I must say it was probably the biggest opening I ever had in the day. And then Perry says to me after, "Gee, that was funny when you ripped your pants. Do you do that every show?" And the other thing talk about wardrobe was when I did the Judy Garland show. I mean, here was this kid from Canada, not known anywhere, so green, and so eager. And I'm doing the Judy Garland show. Wow, right? And I remember I sent my suit over to the cleaners. They were filming on Fairfax Avenue at CBS. And my manager took my suit over to be cleaned. And then he picked it up about an hour before the show and brought it back and went into the dressing room. I was getting ready to do the Garland show. And we opened up the cellophane on the suit. The pants were missing. I had no trousers. So my manager goes to the director of the Judy Garland show and says, "I don't think Rich can do the show. He has no pants." He said, "Don't be funny. Come on, stop doing shtick." "No, he has no trousers." "Really?" "No, he has no pants. He can't do the show. When's he going to do it, in his shorts?" So anyway, we got a page. They took a page, and I wore his trousers. And if they'd shot that thing full, like they shot me from about the waist up, you'd see that the pants only came down to about. So I did the Judy Garland show with somebody else's pants.
How did you get on the Johnny Carson show? Talk about how that.
It's interesting how I got on the Johnny Carson show. That show was really important to do. I said Ed Sullivan was important, Hollywood Squares, but the Carson show, the Tonight Show, everybody watched that. And they asked me after the Garland show if I would go on the Johnny Carson show, the Tonight Show. And I actually said to my manager, "No, I don't want to do it." And he went, what? What? The Tonight Show? You don't want to do it? I said, no, because, you know, he's going to ask me if I imitate him, and I don't do him, and it's going to be embarrassing. So I'd like to go on after I learn how to do Johnny Carson. You know, it'll have more impact if I can do Carson. So I studied Johnny Carson. I listened to tapes. I watched the show every night. I really concentrated on doing Johnny Carson, and I couldn't get his voice down. And, you know, and they still wanted me on the show, and I was getting frustrated, you know. And then I went out to San Diego one weekend, and I went to a zoo in San Diego, the San Diego Zoo. This is a true story. And I'm looking at all the different animals in the cages. And I went over to a cage, and I saw a bunch of ostriches in this cage. And I'm looking at these ostriches, and I go, that's the key to doing Johnny Carson, an ostrich, you know? So that's... So I got on the Johnny Carson show because I went to the San Diego Zoo. True story. Now if I have to do Donald Trump, who should I be looking at? Maybe the monkeys.
Did he ever disapprove of
Johnny?
Yeah.
No, I think Johnny liked my impression. I mean, on the Dean Martin roast of Johnny Carson, one of my better shots actually, I did all Johnny's mannerisms, and I would do a line that wasn't that funny, and then I would do a mannerism, and there were 23 of them, and that was the hook I did, and that went over big, and Johnny loved that. He thought that was hysterical, and it's one of the better roasts. You know, I think of all, I did 24 of those Dean Martin roasts. I would say the Johnny Carson one and the Jimmy Stewart one and probably the Dean Martin one were my favorites. Yeah.
Speaking of favorites, who were your three most popular, or the three that you enjoyed doing the most?
Today? I think I'm known for Nixon, of course. Oh my God. I did Nixon so much back in the 70s, my own parents tried to have me impeached. Nixon was very physical, you know, and the voice was very identifiable. But Nixon, of course, you know, the way he hunched over and and the way he walked, you know, he walked like this. And the reason he walked like that was that he wore the same blue suit his whole life. He never took the hanger off. But I would say Nixon in the 70s was a big impression for me, and then later Ronald Reagan was another great impression, which I loved to do. I loved him. And I'm probably known for Johnny Carson and Jimmy Stewart. I'd say those were the most popular of all.
Paul Lynde would be right up there.
Well, Paul Lynde, yeah, because Paul was larger than life, and Paul always looked like he was sucking on a bad lemon.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Every time I did him on Hollywood Squares, he'd make a face.
Who's he doing? Who's that supposed to be? Is that supposed to be me? I'm gonna sue.
He hated it. He really did. I don't know why, but he just, maybe because I made him even more feminine than he was. I don't know. You know, he was funny though, Paul Lynde. Oh my God, he was funny.
I think we talked about this earlier, about the side jobs, the dubbing.
Oh, dubbing?
Yeah,
For movies?
I think we went over that, so I don't.
Well, I did a lot of dubbing for movies and television shows when the star had either lost their voice or passed away. And I did Peter Sellers, the Pink Panther. I did David Niven, and Gene Kelly. I did a Christmas special with Gene Kelly, and as I said, Tony Curtis.
Yeah. We got ahead of ourselves, and
Norman, why do you have glasses in both eyes?
I asked Lynn Scratcher that same question. I know that the other night I saw Rich's show at the Trop, and the crowd was really into it. It was fabulous. But as I told you earlier today, I thought your Andy Rooney was spectacular, and I was wondering if you'd share that. I know you did a little teaser, but
yeah, Andy Rooney is great because of mostly because of the material. Pia Zadora, who's here today, Pia loves George Burns, and I have to tell the Fox hat joke, but I've told that too many times. But Andy Rooney is interesting because people still know who he is, because that show, 60 Minutes, it's still on, isn't it?
yeah.
And Andy Rooney was on that, I think, for 50 years or something. And so, Andy Rooney, anything that's kind of, that you have to think about, is kind of strange, works with Andy Rooney, if you wrote a book about failures and it didn't sell, would it be considered a success? I've often wondered, why is it when it rains, sheep don't shrink? There's just so many of those Andy Rooneys that, wonder if you can cry underwater. Stupid things, but, they make you think, Why do they call it an asteroid when it's outside the Earth's hemisphere, and a hemorrhoid when it's in your ass? So many Andy Rooneys, oh my God. But, people still remember it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Now, I know that it's obvious that the key is picking up on something distinctive about someone.
Right.
So there are probably a lot of people out there that are very famous that Rich Little's never going to do.
True.
Who are some of those people?
Do you remember Gene Barry, the actor? Played Maverick, I think, and he got really upset at me one time on Hollywood Squares because he said, "You don't imitate me, and I'm angry, and why don't you do me? I'm a big star, and this is I don't even want to talk to you." And he walked away. And I just said, "Well, I haven't been able to pick up on your voice," but he was quite upset about it.
Wow.
Some people like it, some people don't. Nixon, when I did Nixon in front of him, that was okay, because when I did him, he didn't know I was doing them. I remember when I did meet Nixon down in San Clemente for a big party I was asked to attend, and I ended up doing Nixon in front of him, and it just bombed. It was just awful, because I'm doing my Richard Nixon. I'm talking away as Nixon, and I could hear him turn to his white hat and say, "Why is this young man speaking in a strange voice?" And so he didn't know I was doing it, But I thought I did him pretty good, because when I left that party, his wife went with me.
How about today's stars? Do you do a Clooney or
No.
Brad Pitt?
No, George Clooney, I don't think he can do it. If Brad Pitt, no. Actually, I'd rather do Angelina Jolie. Boy, if I could do her, I'd never be lonely. End up jumping myself. But, no, a lot of the voices of today are really hard to do. They really are. They're not distinctive. Like back in the 40s, you had Clark Gable and Humphrey Bogart and Edward G. Robinson and James Cagney, and everybody could imitate those people because they were larger than life and they were identifiable quickly. But today's actors are good actors, but they don't seem to have distinctive voices anymore. So it gets tougher and tougher to do modern people. When I see an impersonator do somebody that's never been done before, I have great admiration for them, you know, because it's not easy, you know. I'm working on Donald Trump. You know, I guess I have to put a beaver on my head or something. But you know, Donald Trump is mostly.
Yeah.
I haven't got the voice down yet, but I'm working on it. But of course, we don't know what's going to happen. It could be a waste of time. Somebody said to me, "Did you do Hillary?" I said, "No." And neither does Bill. Oh, you're right. That was a cheap shot.
How about Bill Maher, speaking of occasional cheap shots?
Who?
Bill Maher.
Bill Maher, I try to ignore. I'm not a big fan, but you know, I'm conservative because of my association with Reagan and with George Bush Sr., and I knew them very well. And you know, being a Canadian, actually, to tell you the truth, whether I'm a liberal or a conservative, I would vote for the person more than the party. So I don't know. We need somebody different. That's why Donald Trump's doing so well, because he may be a show-off and he may be a little over the top, but at least he isn't a politician. He's a businessman. That I like. So you know.
Sure.
So we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, a lot of things can happen between now and election. Oh my gosh. I mean, I've got so many people running right now. It's unbelievable. There's not a good voice in the whole lot of them. That's why I always wanted Hubert Humphrey to get in as president, because I like to do little Hubert Humphrey. I'm just as pleased as Punch to be here today. Little Hubert Humphrey. You know, Humphrey came to see me at the Sands Hotel years ago. Hubert Humphrey was a wonderful man with a great sense of humor. He came to see my show, came back when the show was over and said, "You know, Rich, I think somebody told you that I was out there and you went easy on me. You didn't do your usual routine because you knew I was there." I said, "Oh, no, Mr. Humphrey, no, I just did the regular. I don't believe you. I think you softened it because I was out there." And I said, no. Well, he came back to see me in a disguise. And so the maitre d' phones me and says, "I think Hubert Humphrey's out here. He's wearing a mustache and a silly hat and a wig." And so they thought it was Hubert Humphrey, and they brought him back after, and it wasn't Hubert Humphrey. It was a janitor or somebody. But you know, Dan Quayle did the same to me once. I've got a picture at home of Dan Quayle, and he's written under it, "Rich, go easy on me, will you? Not everybody can spell potato." That's what he wrote. That's what he wrote. Okay.
Pranksters. I know that you and Robert Goulet were pals, and I know that Robert was quite a prankster. I think you've got a fun story about that.
Oh yeah, Bob was like a big kid, and I loved him and I miss him. He had the greatest voice. So I mean, there's nobody like Bob Goulet today. That kind of a voice, you know. And I remember we were playing Cohasset, the theater in the Round, I think it was, years ago, and I opened for Bob Goulet. And I did my routine for about 20 minutes, and then I finished with my Robert Goulet impression, "If Ever I Would Leave You," and then they were going to bring him on. So I saved his impression till the end of my act. And so I started to sing, if ever I would leave you, it wouldn't be in summer. And Bob, unbeknownst to me, goes up to the back of the theater, gets a microphone, turns it on, and starts singing it with me. So now we've got stereo. And I'm singing, and the minute I hear him start to sing, I stop singing and just mouth the words. And he sings the whole song. And the place went wild and gave me a standing ovation.
You were born on the same day, but a few years apart.
Yeah, November 26th, yeah.
And there was a birthday
Yeah.
story involved.
Well, we used to always have double birthdays. You know, we'd show up in some restaurant and celebrate each other's birthday. Yeah, he had the same birthday I did. He was a few years older, but boy, that was a loss when we lost him.
Yeah.
Because I loved him, and of course, my dear friend Steve Rossi, I still miss Steve.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve was so close. Such a great friend of me, and he is, and everybody. We miss Steve. You miss Steve, because Steve was a great source of information. He'd phone Norm up and say, Norm, this is Steve. You know, I don't know, give you the latest gossip. You know?
Yeah, there was always a tip about who was there or whatever. I'm going to go back to Robert, because I remember there was a cake story, birthday cake.
Oh yeah, well,
He sent you
Well-
sent him a birthday cake, and he regifted it back to you.
that's right. I sent him a birthday cake for his birthday, and then he realized it was my birthday, so he sent me the same cake back. With less candles.
Jack and Trotter, you were hired by Jack a number
Yep.
of times.
Yep,
You opened for
Jack Jones.
Jack Jones, and there's a story about
At the
that.
Sands Hotel. That was my first engagement in Vegas.
Early
And
mid-sixties.
Jack and Trotta was still in charge back then. The Rat Pack had finished by the time I showed up. That was over. But Jack was still there. And I opened for Jack Jones, and we did great business. We had the place packed. Well, he did. You know, I was just the opening act. But we did so well that we were held over for an extra night, and we were thrilled. And the place was jammed, and we were held over. And when I went on stage, I saw Jack and Trotta and all the owners of the Sands Hotel standing in the wings, and I couldn't figure out why they were standing there. Well, I know now. They didn't tell me that the audience was all German. They were all from Germany that didn't speak any English. So I go out, I'm doing the same routine that I got great reaction all week, and bombing terribly. Got nothing, right? And I look to the wings, they're all laughing. They're in hysterics, right?
Speaking of pranks.
Yeah, because they didn't know anybody I did. And I said, why don't you tell me it was an all-German audience? I would have done Marlene Dietrich, Eric von Stroheim, Kurt Jurgens.
Book. Are you working on a book?
Yeah, I've got a book that I've been working on for 10 years, and it's a coloring book, but it's my life story. It's all funny things that have happened with all the people that I impersonate down through the years, and it's called Little by Little, People I Have Known and Been. And we hope to get it out soon. I think they're waiting for me to pass away before they can release it. But then I won't be able to sign it, so I think we should get it out soon. And I think they're waiting for me to pass away before they can release it. But then I won't be able to sign it, so I think we should get it out soon. But it's full of a lot of stories about Reagan, because so many funny things happened with Reagan. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you. He had just such a great sense of humor. I remember one time I was at the White House, and Reagan started to do impressions for me. And he did his Jimmy Stewart, and he went, Rich, I do a pretty fair Jimmy Stewart. I want your opinion. I said, fine, Mr. President, let's hear it. Well, I'm not as good as you, but let me give it a shot. I'm looking and going, geez, don't give up your day job. And then he did John Wayne, and that was not much better. And then he did Truman Capote for me. The President of the United States starts doing Truman Capote. He's going, this is Truman Capote, and I'm just so excited to be here at the White House, and I just met President Reagan, and anyway, it wasn't bad. And then he said to me, what do you think? I said, well, I think your Truman Capote is probably your best, Mr. President. Yes, but I don't know what to say. I need something funny. Can you give me a line or two? And I thought, yeah, as a matter of fact, I can. I had a joke that I used as Truman Capote. So I told this to the president. And he said, wait a second, let me get this down. So he got a Secret Service man, got a piece of paper and wrote on his back the joke, okay? Guy's standing there at attention, he's writing on his back. And he says, all right, give it to me, what is it? And I said, well, this is Truman Capote. You know, a lot of people think that I wrote in cold blood, but that's not true. Actually, I wrote in ink. So Reagan thought this was hysterical, and he's writing down, what is it? Yeah, a lot of people think that, yes, he's writing this on the back of this guy, and just sort of scribbling this down, and he says, I wrote in ink, and he says, that is hysterical, Rich. He folds it up and he puts it in his pocket, and he says, I can't wait to do that for Gorbachev. Exactly what he said. So now I'm thinking, wait a minute. He does a pretty good Truman Capote, but if he's going to do that for Gorbachev, you know, he's going to walk up and, oh, Mr. General Secretary, listen to this. To relate to. He was sort of in his own world, you know. He was very nice. He was very polite and fun and everything. But all you'd get from Dean would be before a roast, he'd stick his head in the door and say, "How are you, Pally? We're going to have fun tonight." And that would be it.
He said he never prepared.
He never prepared. He didn't even know who the guest of honor was. No. At one time, we were doing a roast to Michael Landon at the MGM Grand, where we did most of those roasts, right? And everybody was there. Orson Welles was there, Lucille Ball was there, Jimmy Stewart, John Wayne, Jack Benny, George Warren. Everybody was in the green room, and that was the most fun time. And the green room was terrific, even better than the show, because everybody's chatting and having a great time. And then all of a sudden, Dean stuck his head in and said, "Hey, we're going to start to do this thing. I got to get out of here in 20 minutes." And good luck. But anyway, we all left the green room and walked towards the dais to start the roast. And as we're approaching the dais, Dean says to me, I'm walking beside him, "Rich, who are we honoring tonight?" I said, "What? Who's the guest of honor?" I said, "Michael Landon." "Oh, that's a good choice. We're going to have a lot of fun." So he didn't even know. Can you imagine showing up to do a TV show, like that, and not even asking who you were honoring? You see, Dean really didn't care. No, he didn't read the cue cards, and he didn't know who the guest was, and when he stumbled and lost his place and couldn't read, and I mean, he had that wonderful ability to turn a bad thing or a disaster into something that's funnier than what it was intended. Well, he was a great ad-libber. Oh my God! I mean, and Frank knew this. You see the Rat Pack together. I mean, Dean's the funny one, and then I don't know what Joey Bishop was doing. Joey was standing around wondering when he's going to be on the show. Peter Lawford, I don't know what the heck he was doing. Well, we do know why Peter Lawford was there. That was Frank's connection with the White House.
Yeah.
And that's why Peter Lawford was there. You know, because Frank was very impressed with people of authority. Power. He liked presidents, got in with every president, and of course, you know, with the mob and everything. But it was the power that he was interested in. You know, Frank was. But Frank was great. He was just a man of many moods. You know, I mean.
Did you ever see the mood?
I never saw a bad Frank Sinatra when he was angry. Thank heaven for that. I never saw that. He was always extremely nice to me, you know, and he was adoring. He was always nice to Pia and everybody. But, you know, I don't think either one of us saw that really nasty side to Frank, which he did have. It was, as I say, he was a man of moods.
You said that you could impersonate him, that there wasn't something there that you needed something more, yeah.
Well, Frank is the kind of impression that is difficult because of his phrasing, mostly, and the sound is so distinctive. And even though I do them, I think it's okay. But to do a perfect Frank Sinatra, Bob Anderson does it quite well, looks like him. But I don't think anybody's ever to do an exact impression of Frank Sinatra. It's just one of those voices that is difficult to do. You know, usually before I do Frank, I have to hit somebody. But you know, I mean, Frank, that inauguration for Reagan, you know, Frank was right there. He put the whole thing on, and as I say, he was involved with every president, especially Kennedy. You know. And that was one of the first impressions I ever did was John F. Kennedy. You know, you remember his great speech, John F. Kennedy? Ask not what your country can do for you, but what Maryland can do for me. Isn't that no, it's something like that.
Did you get to know Sammy very well?
I didn't know Sammy that well. But Sammy was a fun guy and loved to laugh. And when Sammy laughed, he just lost it. I mean, you know, he was a very talented guy. A lot of people think that Sammy was the most talented of them all. You know, he could sing, he could dance, he could do impressions, he could play drums. I mean, he could do almost anything, Sammy Davis. And then Dean was actually, in many ways, a bigger star than Frank, when you think of it, because Dean was successful on television, records, probably he and Sinatra were even on movies, but Dean was way more successful on television than Frank was, you know.
One of the first things that I heard when I moved here about 16 years ago was people talked about they wished it was the old days.
Yeah, they always try to bring it back.
And I just wondered what you miss about the 60s Vegas that you introduced.
See, I mean, the thing about my career is that the people I met. Yeah. I think that's the greatest joy I ever got, was to work with my idols and work with people that I admired. And most of them are gone now, but to have known and worked with Jack Benny and George Burns and Lucille Ball and Orson Welles and Bing Crosby, I mean, that's the real thrill for me. And to think that I was involved in all that, you know, and they're all gone, but everybody tries to bring them back, but you can't do it. You really can't. They were so unique, those people, that, you know, you can come close, but nobody can do that exactly. It's impossible. But that's the big blessing in my career, was to work with all these people that I admired, and then I drew a lot of them too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think we're going to turn it over to the audience to ask their questions. Rich, thank you very much. I'm going to let Brian Schofield get involved here right now.
I've been involved the whole time. I'm excited.
Very nice.
Wonderful, everyone. Our pepper him with questions backstage, but I'm not going to do that. I got all the information I need. So. Does anyone do any impressions here that would like to show Rich Little?
Rich, have you ever done Barack Obama?
Do Barack Obama. Matter of fact, he's having a hard time doing himself.
You know, Rich,
Barack Obama. When I was a little boy, I wanted to be president in the worst way. Mission accomplished.
I have some friends here from Palm Springs, and you saw him do Barack Obama before you left.
Yes, I did. I think I've seen him 4 times now. This is the 4th time in the last 2 years.
Really?
Big fans here, right? You got a question?
Hello, Rich. Thank you so much for sharing today. It was fantastic. I had the chance to spend some time with Peter Marshall, and we talked about the Hollywood Squares. Is there any anecdote or story that's one of your favorites from that show? Because I know it got pretty grueling after doing this so long.
That's a good one.
Hollywood Squares?
Peter Marshall, yes?
Yes.
Any other anecdotes?
It was a great show to do because you need no preparation, and you just had to have 5 outfits. You did 5 shows, you know. And I can remember, because I did Hollywood Squares a lot back in the 60s, 70s. Don Amici, do you remember Don Amici? I've never figured this out. I guess he was just getting older, but Don Amici, we'd have to change outfits because we'd now be shooting for another day. And I noticed that Don Amici was changing his shoes. And thought I could never figure out. They're sitting behind the desk, they don't even need trousers. He changed his shoes for every show, about 5 pairs of shoes. But Hollywood Squares was fun to do. They actually gave people answers. They didn't give them the real answers, but they gave them the joke.
Yeah.
And you could either use it or do something of your own. And I would say that Paul Lynde probably used about 60-70% of what they wrote for him, and then a lot of times he just ad-libbed. But it was a great show to do, and you met a lot of big people on that show because they had great movie stars and the best comics, and it was really a fun time to do Hollywood Squares.
That was a great show. That was a real good show. Question?
Thank you so much, Rich. In honor of one of my favorite American humorists that passed this week, Yogi, have you done any of his? Yogi Berra.
Yogi Berra.
Yogi Berra. What he sounds like. I mean, that's like saying, can you do Tiger Woods? Can you do, sports figures are hard to do because I don't talk. It's like doing columnists. Certain people don't say anything. Somebody said to me, do you imitate, Djokovic, the great tennis player that we have? No, I never said anything.
Rich, would you say that's the question you get asked the most? Do you do blank?
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, sometimes people say the strangest things to me. Do you imitate, pick somebody really obscure? See Aubrey Smith.
Okay, question.
Yeah, character actor maybe, Which I do. I do a lot of character acting.
You must do some Canadian folk, because we got some
Canadians, yes. I'm always getting that from Canadians.
Did you want to ask a question?
I have a question which you probably won't be able to remember. Way back in the 50s when you were involved with the Little Theater in Ottawa.
Yes.
My sister, Nancy Watchorn, had 2 lunch dates with you. And she said, oh no, he'll never remember that.
Did he make the lunch dates? Did he make those lunch dates?
He made the lunch dates.
Oh.
Did he make a pass?
He had a steady boyfriend.
Did he make a pass?
You guys want the most devious stuff today, don't you? Rich, what do you think about that?
Do
you remember?
you remember?
Back at the Ottawa Little Theater.
Right.
Dating her sister.
And I was dating who?
Nancy Watchorn. She was Boss Queen at Carleton University.
It was hard for me in those days to get dates because nobody knew who I was. You know, they'd want to go to bed with Clark Gable and they'd usually wake up with Truman Capote.
Here's a question.
Rich, after doing all these impressions, has your original voice changed at all?
My voice changed? I don't think so. No, of course it changed when I became a teenager, but
Tell them about your vocal cords. You had your vocal cords.
oh yeah, one time I went to a throat specialist and he said, gosh, you do all these impressions so well, I'd like to take a picture of your vocal cords and see if they're different. So I said, okay. So he took a picture of my vocal cords. I've got it at home hanging on a wall. Looks like a moon landing. And he said that they just look normal. You know, I was looking at it thinking maybe they're little people hanging off of it. But they just look normal. But I have a picture of my vocal cords. And they're like everybody else's.
LJ has a question.
I'm doing really well. First of all, I want to say this is a big deal, what Norm does here, because this is history. It really is. And Rich, I sent a love from Tiffany to you. We had a family emergency with our dog. But I want you to know that when you and Pia and Steve came out when we had to leave to go take care of my parents last year, to call my mom and let her know that you all came out to wish us well, probably did more for my mother at that time, and that's one thing about you all. And to be able to say, I know you. My grandparents primarily raised me, and I was privileged to watch black and white TV in the late 50s and through the 60s, and it was Perry Como, and Andy Williams, and Lawrence Welk, and Ed Sullivan. So I had this great education, a variety, and that's gone. It really is reality TV, and there are some good ones, Pia, that I've seen. But again, I want to thank Norm and Rich. You have inspired so many people through the years, and again, I'm honored to be here today. And Norm, just keep doing what you're doing, brother, because for the people that are here, they get what this is about. And when you go home tonight, call someone and let them know what they missed. Rich Little and Norm. Thank you.
Thank you. Where's the lip by right here? Yes, sir.
Ryan, would you go to Pia and ask Pia to ask Rich
She's right here.
She'll want the fox hat.
We want the dish. Since you apparently know all the dish, ask a question maybe someone else wouldn't have known.
Well, it's hard because I've known Rich for too many years. I mean, I was like 16 and you were 22 when we did our first show together in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
And you were...
Promises, Promises.
Promises, Promises.
That's the real title.
Yeah, and I remember, John Kenley, who had the theater, there were a lot of big stars performing in the theater, and at that time, Rich was a big star, and I was kind of, just up and coming. And everybody was nervous. It was at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium, the run-through, because Rich Little was there, and he was, like, looking at everybody, and, everyone was, like, shaking in their boots. And I remember Rich Little, the producer, John Kenley, told me he was a hermaphrodite. Remember, John?
Is this where TMI comes in? This might be a bit much.
John Kenley was a hermaphrodite, yeah. And he was great. He was,
John Kenley.
Yes. And he came up to me after the rehearsal, after the run-through, and he said, Rich Little said, he pointed to you and said, that little girl is going to be a big star one day. Do you
wasn't
remember
kidding.
that?
He was not kidding.
But the story about the hat, tell the story about the hat.
Oh, yeah.
When I brought you the hat on stage.
Yeah, Promises, Promises was made into a movie called The Apartment with Jack Lemmon.
Yes.
And it was Burt Bacharach and Hal David who did the score. And I played J.C. Baxter, the main character. And Pia was one of the dancers on the show. Or were you singing?
Yeah, singing and dancing.
Singing and dancing. And in the second act, it opens with Baxter sitting at his desk, and he opens up the drawer and finds his top hat. and then puts the top hat on and does a number all involving the top hat. So the second act opened, I opened up the door, no hat. So I can't proceed. No hat, I can't do the hat number. I said, I've got no hat, no hat. Pia comes on in the wings, brings me my hat, but does a little dance routine, bringing me my hat. And she's twirling around and doing all kinds of things, and then flips it over like this, and I grab the hat. And I said to myself, boy, this girl's pretty good. She's going to go places. And she did. She did.
I definitely don't want to miss the people up above. And you thought I was going to miss you, didn't you?
Yes.
I'm pretty tall.
I know.
Just
Great.
thank you. Shout it out.
Thank you, Norm, and thank you for being here, Rich. Are you going to sell any of your drawings?
Today?
They can go on your website, can't they?
Yes.
He is an artiste if you haven't already seen him.
Come and see me at the Tropicana. Every night is 7 o'clock, except Mondays and Fridays. And we sell them, and all the money we make goes to the Wounded Warrior.
There it is. God bless you, sir. That's wonderful. Up above, even though up above.
This is to help settle a dispute between me and my wife.
Oh, you're going to be in between this. This is danger zone, Rich.
We came to Vegas for the first time in October of '75, and you and Mel Torme were on the same ticket.
Right.
And one of us thinks it was at the Sands, and one of us thinks it was at the MGM.
This could make or break their marriage.
He doesn't. No.
Yeah, it wasn't at the MGM. It would have to be at the Sands or the Desert Inn.
Okay, that's good enough for me.
I'm taking you on that one. Oh, you know that. There was never a right answer to that one. Up here. You have to yell that one real good.
Okay, I'm up here in the Bob Future seat, so. Rich, I just want to thank you. Growing up, I used to always watch you doing Nixon impersonations and Ted Kennedy. So, thanks a lot. My sweet goal was to do a picture doing Nixon in front of the White House, outside the gates, of course, but because of you, I was inspired to do him. Thank you very much.
He loves Nixon and Kennedy. Loves that. Very nice. A question over here. Oh, yes. Now, someone had a question earlier. Do you have a dual citizenship from?
Yes, I do.
You do? Well, let's see that.
I became an American, well, I'm half American, half Canadian. And the top half
Getting
is
dirty again, I know
American,
you
the
are.
bottom half is Canadian.
I do it.
Anyway,
I do it.
when I was sworn in, I was sworn in by a judge here in Vegas, and I was sworn in as John Wayne.
Question.
Yes, I have a wonderful DVD of your performance of The Presidents. And
Oh, yeah.
I think it was so outstanding. I was wondering, have you ever had thoughts about presenting that here in Las Vegas? Because I'm sure many people will enjoy your presentation.
Doing The Presidents?
Yes.
Well, I did do it as a play and toured the country. I didn't do it long. And then we filmed it for PBS. And I did, I think, 8 presidents, and I had 8 changes, going from one president to the other, and I had about 2.5 to 3 minutes to change with the makeup and the wardrobe. And that was the toughest part of doing the show, was the changing over. You know, I started with Kennedy, and I went right through to, I think I went right through to Clinton at that time. And I loved the show, and I always thought it should have gone to Broadway, but it never did. But then when I did my one-man show in Jimmy Stewart, that was almost got to Broadway. But you know, it's tough. It's tough because you need a lot of money behind you to go to Broadway.
Yeah.
You know, it can be if it's success, you got it made, and if it's not, it's over. You know.
Now, Rich, some of us remember answering machines. Did you do a cassette of the president's voice that people could actually plug in to their answering machine and get your voice?
Yes, they were called phonies. Phonies.
Did you like that, and did you make up $1 gazillion on it?
No, I didn't make any money on it.
The money was phony too. Huh?
The people I imitated made a lot of money. There were telephone answering messages you could put on your phone and have a celebrity answer your phone. Good idea. Good idea. But that was a long time ago.
Very good. Interesting.
Do you do any women?
I want you to know that she also handed me a hotel key.
This is where we bring security in.
Well, actually, to answer your question, I do Carol Channing. I do Catherine Hepburn, Dr. Ruth, and Edith Bunker.
Edith Bunker, we would love to hear that. We would love to hear Edith Bunker. Please.
I just had a terrible experience. Come on, Edith. What are you talking about here? I just went to the bathroom and you wouldn't believe what happened. I looked down into the toilet bowl and I saw 4 quarters, 3 dimes, and 2 nickels. What does it mean? Ah, geez, Edith, you're just going through the change.
I'm so glad we went there. A couple more questions.
Mr. Little, I really do hope that a couple of nights ago you might have been watching The Tonight Show and saw Kevin Spacey as Jimmy Stewart reading that poem to Carol Burnett. That's great. That was a delight.
Did he do it well?
Yes.
Well, you may have competition.
I don't know about that. He also does a Carson.
He does a good Jack Lemmon. He does a great Jack Lemmon.
That's great, yeah. He did Jack Lemmon also. Fantastic actor, Mr. Spacey.
Apparently this guy came to the wrong show. The Spacey show is next door. Just teasing you. No, very nice. Let's give another question over here while Rich. What's your question?
Yeah, I'd like to know, can you do Bob Hope or Red Skelton?
Very nice.
Bob Hope. Bob Hope! I want to tell you, this is Robert Hope. I just flew over to England to do a command performance for Queen Elizabeth and the royal family. They ran out of ushers, but I want to tell you, I shook hands with so many blue bloods, my fingers looked like my toes during the Great Depression season. Bob had a certain rhythm to his voice, you know, and he was great. I liked Bob Hope a lot. He was very nice to me, and I remember Bob Hope is so funny. I played Harris at Lake Tahoe, and I knew that Bob Hope liked prunes. And he used to say to me, Rich, when you go up to Harris, you got to try the prunes. Boy, they're the greats, you know. That's why I take that engagement, because of the prunes. So I played Harris, and I went into the kitchen and talked to the chef, and I sent him a crate of prunes to Bob Hope. And he got it, and he sent me the nicest letter, which I still have. You wouldn't believe it. You'd think I'd given him $1 million. And so he's on the Carson show 2 weeks later, and my name was brought up, and he said, oh yeah, the prune guy.
And you know why he's on the Carson show 2 weeks later? He's been in the restroom ever since. A question up here.
It's not so much a question. Somebody already asked about your beautiful drawings, because even from here I can tell they're very lovely. And I wondered if you ever thought of publishing them. But my comment is, I may be one of the younger fans in the crowd, and my entire life, nobody comes close to what you do. So I thank you for it.
Wow, that's a nice testimonial. Do you get a lot of young people just coming up to you going, I watched my mom's tapes or my parents this, and have you gotten a new audience out of that?
Well, you know, sometimes I'll have people that'll come to the show that are, you know, young person and probably don't know anybody I impersonate. But I find them laughing because they're probably laughing at the jokes. And, you know, they just, I remember somebody not too long ago was talking to me and saying, my daughter saw your show and she's only 15 and she thinks you're very funny and wonders why you talk in different voices.
We have time for a few more questions, Norm? Do you have time for a few
Absolutely.
more? Okay, good. Let's have another one up here. Well, next time you guys come sit down here with us. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I also grew up watching everything you did, Rich, especially with the Muppets. It's just been great to
The
have
Muppets.
you growing up.
The Muppets, yeah.
Do you have an impression of Bill O'Reilly, the O'Reilly Factor?
Bill O'Reilly, do you have an impression of Bill O'Reilly? She'd love to hear that.
You are Alexander V. No spin zone. Michael begins. And Timon.
I'm feeling like that was on the fly and that was damn good. I'm feeling like you just pulled that right out.
Well, I watch the O'Reilly Factor, but I thought about doing him, but it's tough. He's hard to do.
You know, last weekend I ran into Noah Blanc, who's Mel Blanc's son, who does the voices for Bugs Bunny and all the other ones. And everyone asked him, hey, can you do me a voice? When people come up to you and ask you that, at any time does it get annoying at all?
Well, people ask me to do impressions all the time.
Well, like in the grocery store, right? Anywhere.
Oh, yeah. I was in Walmart the other day, and I gave them my credit card, and the girl looked at it and said, Rich Little. God, they got the same name as that comedian. And she looked at it and said, handed it to me and said, boy, I bet you wish you had his money.
Rich Little shops at Target, not Walmart, right? Is that what you're saying? That's wonderful. Any other questions over here? Questions back here?
I've got one.
You got one? You'll have to yell it.
I enjoyed your show at the Shimmer Theater. That was Jimmy Stewart.
Oh, yeah.
You and Steve were headed to the big Broadway.
Yes, we were almost made it.
So are you going to continue to try to get to...
Well, the show that I'm doing now over at the Trop, I think has a better shot at it because it's based on my career. And when I was doing Jimmy Stewart, everybody loved the show, and I loved Jimmy Stewart, and I did all the people that he worked with. That was the hook of doing the show. I could imitate Clark Gable and Henry Fonda and John Wayne and everybody. But when I was doing Jimmy Stewart, a lot of people said, Rich, we love Jimmy Stewart. Why don't you do a show based on your life? And I thought, well, I'm not as important as Jimmy Stewart. And they said, no, but you've had just as good a career and you've worked with all these people. So why don't you do your life story? So that's what I'm now doing, my own life story.
And real quick, it's at the Trop, it's at the Laugh Factory, every night of the week. When is it dark?
Monday 7 o'clock.
Hold on.
5 nights a week, off Mondays and Fridays.
Is that right?
That's
You're
correct.
just going to shake your head on the microphone? Yeah, he got it. Okay, I'll make sure we'll do it. Any other questions for Rich before we take it? All right.
Don't ask more.
We got one more. We'll do this last question, and then we'll all just wish we could do this for another hour or two. Okay, here we go.
Well, I read in Norm's column that you were going to introduce Trump today. And my second question is, could you give us a little bit of your personal life?
Of my personal life?
Yeah, like, what'd you do today?
For breakfast. Are you married? Do you have any children?
The dish. Give us.
Oh, yeah, that's another.
Rich, give us some dish there. Marriage is Harvey dish. Just throw it down on the dish. It's Harvey dish.
Yes, well, I'm married 4 times. The real love of my life passed away about 8 years ago. But I've been married 4 times, and at each one of my weddings, they threw minute rice. It's hard to be married to me because, you never know who you're going to end up with. I think I'm through with marriage, but that's okay. I'm still available.
Did any wife have a specific request when it was time to turn the lights down? Any voice? He doesn't have to answer, but please answer.
I think we touched on this earlier. That's right. Well, yeah. Go to bed with Clark Gable and wake up with Truman Capote.
Thank you for all you do. Thank you for the artwork that is helping wounded warriors. Thank you for coming out today. We've touched stars because we touched one who has touched so many. So it's like the 3 degrees of separation.
I'd like to thank Norm for doing that great job.
Thank you, Norm. We love hearing you. Norm Clark doesn't just get to write about him, he gets to visit him, meet him. He was over your house the other day and stuff like that. So you guys are just like, oh.
And I have a great staff of people who will work for me. Dana is here, Dana Stern, and
met them.
Jerry Fisher, who can't get along without her, and Lori Caceres, my producer, who does everything for me. Everything. She comes over every night and says, Rich, it's time to call it a night. Calling from the home.
And she's very particular, does a very good job. I've noticed that. She's very on the money. Norm, any final comments?
Final comments would be, thank you, Rich, very much for gracing the stage with us today. Everybody had a great time. Honored to be in your company. Rick introduced me to a really special friend the other day at his house. It was a little orange cat with one eye shut. It had cancer, and Rich, was it a rescue cat?
Yeah.
And good for you for that. I think Rich has been getting a lot of mileage out of that one eye cat. But I thank all of you for coming out. As I said, there's a lot of things I do on that.